Tea and Sanctuary with Emma Newman. Hello, my lovelies. Welcome to episode 5, season 2 of Tea and Sanctuary. It's okay, you're safe now. This is going to be a lovely cozy chat about whatever I feel like talking about in the moment. And I have just gone and made myself a cup of tea, which is down on the floor next to me. And as I was making the tea and thinking about recording this episode, I had this urge to tell you about something incredible that happened a few years ago. And it's not in my notes. I don't know why I feel like I really want to tell you about this, but I do. I think it might be because I had a visit from an old friend, an old dear friend, a few days ago. And we were talking about our mutual friend, Kate. Kate was one of my besties for many years, incredibly dear to me. And she died. She died 10 years ago now. In October is the anniversary, the 10-year anniversary. I'm not going to talk about that grief and that sadness and how it felt, because this is Tea and Sanctuary. What I'm going to do is tell you a story that I hope will convey just how incredible Kate was. So a few years ago, she offered to run me a game. And at that time, I had only ever played tabletops and what we call parlour LARPs. So these were like indoor LARPs. A lot of them were either monthly or weekly because they were part of the university role-playing game society that I was in. I ran some of them. I played in far too many of them. And so that I hadn't actually played any other kind of games than those. Hadn't played in a Fest LARP, which I am playing in at the moment, which has now got, I think, around 3,000 players. And she said, I want to run you a game. It's going to be like a live action game and it's going to happen in London and you need to set aside an entire day and an evening for it. And that was literally all I knew. All I knew. I just had to turn up at a particular location and a time. And oh my goodness, it was the most incredible day of my life. Because Kate ran me the most incredible immersion game I have ever experienced. I was the only player. There was a team of NPCs, which is non-player characters, that she was coordinating and she was directing it in real time. And she basically did a kind of Bourne-esque conspiracy thriller, and the game started with me being kidnapped. When I look back on it, it was quite incredible. I was kidnapped by 3 very good friends of mine, obviously not being themselves, and had a bag put over my head. I was driven through suburban London to a location, which was one of their houses, but obviously in the game I didn't know that. I think I had like a little briefing about being a teacher. I think it was actually whilst I was a teacher in London, so I can't remember that very well. So yeah, I was taken to this place under gunpoint with them kind of arguing in the car, tied up in a bathroom, and then rescued. And then had an entire day of being on the run in London. And when I look back on it, I almost can't believe it actually happened. It was such an intense, magical experience. We ended up going to Waterloo. I can remember like set pieces from it, like scenes from it. So after I had been rescued, I was taken on the train into Waterloo and had like a briefing from somebody who was effectively my handler. And I had gone into deep cover and then forgotten who I was. And that was, it was very tropey, but you can have so much fun with tropes in role-playing games because when you're in it, when you're actually living it, they don't feel tired and tropey. They feel incredibly thrilling. And as part of that debriefing, I was given photos of myself in London. And to give you an idea of just how brilliant Kate was, about 3 weeks before this game, she and I went to the BAFTAs together. And that sounds ridiculous as well, because it's not something I would ever go to. We just had one of the audience seats. And I don't know how she'd got hold of the tickets, but she had. And she was like, "You've got to come with me. I really want to go to the BAFTAs." And I was like, "Okay, fine." And she was, "We're going to dress up and we're going to go on the red carpet." So we dressed up in our very, very, very fancy clothes. I had obviously made my outfit. She hired her outfit. Though she could have made it. She was a more skilled dressmaker than I am. So we got all dressed up to the nines. She made me walk down the red carpet, which I hated, and I just hurried as fast as I could because there was that weird moment when people watching the red carpet realised that we were absolute nobodies. And it just felt incredibly weird to me. And I don't like people looking at me. So I went very quickly. But anyway, before the BAFTAs that afternoon, we met up, we had lunch, we went to the hotel together, and one of our other friends, who was one of the, I think actually it might have been John who was playing the handler, secretly took photos of me in the Barbican. We were walking past, no, not the Barbican, past the National Theatre, and there was a place higher up where he could take pictures of me going down the street. And she'd done this, she'd planned this out so that those photos could be given to me as surveillance photos in the game she ran me several weeks later. And it was just the weirdest moment looking at these photos of me several weeks before that I'd had no idea had been taken. Anyway, other highlights of this game. I had to go to the National Theatre, but just like the lobby, which is all open to the public. And I had to poison another spy who was there, who didn't know who I was because I was undercover, and who was being played by my dear friend Ruben. And so he was just sitting in like the cafe seating area, or like a little bit further away where they've got these like comfy chairs. And the fizz rep was a sweetener, and he had a drink in an open cup next to him, and my job was to put the sweetener in the drink without him noticing and without anybody else noticing either. And when I think back to how many ways that could have gone wrong. So I did it, and then the character drank it and then fell unconscious. And of course, normal people, because it's a busy place in London, they probably just thought that he was just having a little rest. And what was so exciting about the game was that this was all played out in public in central London, where it's very, very busy. And no one else knew what was happening apart from Kate's team, Kate and myself. There was another scene where we had to like gather clues, and we were piecing together this mystery, and another scene involved going to some, I think it was like a travel lodge or a Premier Inn, like one of the bog standard hotels. And we had to find a piece of evidence in the room. And we'd got hold of the key card for the room. We had to find the hotel. We got there, we found the room, and then we had to completely turn this room upside down looking for this hidden envelope. It's like all of the really, really cool things that happen in movies I got to do in real life. And the most dramatic scene that was incredible was in it's in an area in London which is near Temple and where all of the Inns of Court are, and there were loads of these really weird alleyways that run between buildings. It's very dense urban environment, but there's like these tiny alleyways, and then they lead to like weird, not like courtyards, but almost like courtyards between buildings. And we'd managed to get in touch with like the head boss of our organization, and she'd agreed to meet, and it was being a character that was being played by Kate. And there's this bench in this courtyard area, and there were about, I don't know, 5 or 6 different alleyways that lead to this central space out in the open air. And we were having this conversation about what was going on, and then she was shot. And she had done the full sound effects, had NPCs who then came into view with a gun. And she fell forwards in front of me with a blood pack that had already been burst, but because of the way she'd staged it, I hadn't seen it as she'd walked towards me, but like a full blood pack on her back, like slumped in front of me. And it was so shocking. I went into shock, and I just sat there and I couldn't move. I just could not move. It was so real and so dramatic. And John, I can't remember what his character was called, had to grab me and literally pull me up, and was like screaming, "Run, run, they're going to kill us," to get me moving. And, you know, before that point, I'd seen so many movies where something happens and someone just stands there. And I've been yelling, "Run, what's wrong with you? Come on." I don't do that anymore. I know exactly what that's like. And actually how realistic that is as a thing that can happen. And then we literally were on the run through London, sprinting out of these alleyways, and lost the people following us. It was really incredible. And afterwards, I found out how she'd staged that, because obviously anyone could have walked through those alleyways. And what she had done is posted members of her team on every single entrance into the alleyways that go to that central courtyard. And if anyone was approaching, they were briefed to say, "Sorry, we're students filming a student piece. We'll only be 5 minutes. Please, could you go round, or could you just wait?" Because it was a very, very short scene. And then the last scene, I think it was back up at the National Theatre again, because there's like a whole complex of buildings and balconies and open air gardens there. And I had to do a dead drop with all of the information I'd gathered. And yeah, and follow people. I had to follow someone through the crowd. It was just incredible. And when I look back on it, the thing that I remember the most, after all of the excitement and the creativity and the sheer theatrical magnificence of the experience, is the love. That she had crafted something so incredible just for me, and that all of our friends had given up their time to be NPCs, to set up things, to block off alleyways, to be ready just in case a random member of the public noticed me dropping something in a cup of tea, so that they could immediately intervene and say, "Don't worry, this is actually a student piece," or whatever. Just the love, the sheer amount of love that went into that. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, and I feel so lucky. And I still feel so lucky that I knew her, and that she was in my life, and that, yeah. When I wrote the first 3 novels in the Split World series, as I was writing them, I used to go and visit her, because I lived in Somerset and she lived in London, or the edge of London. And I would read to her the first draft. And some of my happiest memories are sitting and reading the first draft of the Split Worlds novels to her as she was doing embroidery. And every now and again, when Will, who's one of the main characters, does something utterly despicable, she would just put her sewing down and just look furious and go, "Oh, Will, oh, and then go back to her sewing. Oh, she was just as obsessed about story as I am. Happy days. I'm not going to cry. I don't know why I wanted to tell you about that, but I did. And I think I would never have the courage to do anything like that now, to run something like that. It just doesn't feel like we can do that kind of thing anymore. Something has changed. And yeah. But what an incredible thing, eh? Aren't I lucky? It's like being inside a movie for a day, but the movie was real. It was just intense. What's hilarious, and I hope she won't mind me talking about this, is that one of the people who kidnapped me was Frances Harding. You know, multi-award winning author Frances Harding, who's a friend of mine from uni. And it was really funny being kidnapped by her because she is so lovely. She is honestly one of the loveliest, most gentle, incredible people I've ever known in real life. Having her kidnap me at gunpoint was quite an experience. Ah, happy days, happy days. Before I go any further, here's a big thank you to my gorgeous patrons for keeping the teapot full and for helping me to keep my podcast ad-free. If you'd like to join them to get ad-free versions of these podcast videos, go to patreon.com/Emma Newman. If you'd just like to buy me a nice cup of tea, go to ko-fi.com/Emma Newman. Thank you. So, something that I did plan to talk about today, my cup of tea. I mustn't forget my cup of tea. So please excuse me whilst I have a sip of tea. This is one of my favourite mugs. I've had this for so many years. Why is it my favourite mug? The size is perfect. It's made of china, so it feels delicate but very, very strong as well because it's a mug. I don't even like the design is quite nice. It's something about the way that this mug feels, and it is the perfect size. It's the perfect size for a really good cup of tea. I think I have about 4 favourite mugs. This is one of them. Another one I've got is, again, why is it my favourite mug? I don't know. Again, the size and the feel of the cup. And the design is secondary. It's some, I have no idea where it came from. I think my mum might have given it to me at some point. And it's got like a London red double-decker bus with teddy bears in it. It's a bizarre design. But again, the feel of the mug is very nice. And my other 2 favourite mugs, one is a Tigger mug and one is an Eeyore mug. And I've got one that Kate bought me years and years ago, obviously, which is a pink mug, and it's got a woman drinking a cup of tea on it, and it says something like tea solving crises since 1642 or something. I can't remember the exact thing, but I'll have to look it up. Why can't I remember? I've drunk out of that mug about 50 billion times. Can I remember what's on the front of it now that I'm recording an episode? No, I cannot. Let me just have a little sip of tea. Oh, there's lovely. Oh, that's a nice cup of tea, that, but I can't sit and drink an entire cup of tea. I need to tell you about something which I did actually plan, and that's about my other podcast. And this has been a project which I've been doing for over a year now. And I've never done anything this ambitious in terms of podcasting. And a lot of last year, whilst I was doing all of the research for it and creating it, I had to do a lot of work on overcoming the fear of doing it. And it was partly because it's so important to me. I did not want to screw it up. And the other reason is because it's not something I'm doing by myself. It's a podcast I'm doing in partnership with Friends of the Earth. And the podcast is called Imagining Tomorrow. It's a project I pitched to them. And it's a combination of I'm terrible at talking about things that I've made myself. It's like when someone says, "Oh, what's your new book about?" And I'll just go, there's some people and they do some things. Read it. You'll enjoy it. Can I sum it up in a pithy sentence? So Imagining Tomorrow is all about climate hope. I have been racked with anxiety about the climate crisis for so long, it feels like it's just woven into my body now. I started really worrying about it when I was about 12. And as you can imagine, things have not improved in that time. I also went through a period of reflection, in particular during my breakdown, about the kind of things that I'd been writing. And the Planetfall series that I am incredibly proud of is a very dystopian vision of the future. And I was thinking that I would like to create something in the world which isn't designed to be a warning, but is designed to be inspirational and uplifting. I always had at the back of my mind when I was writing the 3 novels after Planetfall that I was writing a story that was saying, if we don't sort things out now, if we don't make things better now, this is the future we're going to get. And that was very much focusing on neoliberal economics and unfettered capitalism and the disparity in the wealth of the super rich and everybody else. I was making very pointed social commentary about those things, and I wanted to say, look, we need to change course, we need to change. But I was kind of worried that in creating dark visions of the future, along with so many of my fellow authors, that I was contributing to a conversation in a very negative way. And that sounds like it sounds very grand. Like, I don't think for a moment that I am changing the world with the fiction that I am writing in any sense. But there is a conversation that happens within genre, and in particular speculative fiction, that is very, very negative. Because speculative fiction, science fiction, is always about today and what we fear the most. And we often explore that by exploring how bad it could get. And you've seen probably the joke online of science fiction writers writing about the torment nexus and then 20 years later saying, please don't invent the torment nexus. We wrote about how bad the torment nexus is. And you've got some tech bro making the torment nexus. So yes, it isn't that I am so arrogant or big-headed to think that I am bringing about the end of civilization. It is doing that by itself all fine. But what I wanted to try to do for my own mental health, as well as contributing a different thing to the conversation, because there are already many, many excellent writers writing solar punk, writing really positive stuff about the future, I wanted to put something into the world that was filled with hope. But I wanted that hope to be grounded in reality, just like my science fiction is. And Imagining Tomorrow is a combination of passions about solutions to the climate crisis and science fiction. Each episode is drawn from 3 interviews. 1 interview with somebody doing something incredible in their community. 1 interview with somebody who is some kind of innovator, be it in technology or a completely new way to solve a problem. And the 3rd is with a fellow science fiction author. And what we do, or what I've done, is I've done the 2 interviews with the community and the innovator, and then I get that information, I give a briefing to the science fiction author and say, these are the themes that have emerged from this, because it's all on a particular topic per episode. And then we have a conversation about what kind of positive futures we could envisage if those things were done more in the world. And then each episode starts with a tiny snippet of a short story or a tiny snippet of fiction. They're not even, I've only ever written these snippets. I do plan to make them into stories at some point. But these are little snippets of a possible future that is better than where we are now. And it is all rooted in reality. It's rooted in things that are being done now by incredible people doing incredible things. And it's been such a huge amount of work. I've been doing this for about just over a year now, in terms of working, like the majority of my time working on the project. I first pitched the idea the end of the year before. And obviously I've never worked with an organisation. I've never worked with a large charity on a project before. So there was a lot of things to work out about how to work together. Our values align very closely anyway, so there's never been any issues. So it is completely mine. And I'm incredibly proud of it, actually, because it is so technically difficult. And what I mean by that is doing the research. I said that for season 1, I'm hoping there will be more seasons if we can get funding. But for season 1, I want it to be completely UK-centric. I want it to feature communities in the UK, innovators in the UK. Just because, as a country, we're having such an awful time. I wanted to look for people doing great things. And having 3 different interviews to integrate into a cohesive narrative, it's as close to journalism, non-fiction journalism, that I've ever got in my career. And it's a huge amount of work and it's very difficult, but I'm very proud of it. And it's called Imagining Tomorrow, as I've already said. It's wherever you listen to podcasts, whichever service you use, you should be able to find it. If not, you can go to foe.uk/Imagining Tomorrow and you'll find the main page where you can find links to the episodes. And yes, there are 10 in season 1, so that's ongoing this year. And if you have a moment to listen to an episode, or you've already listened to an episode, if you could take a moment to spread the word about it, I'd be really grateful. It's so hard getting the word out there about a podcast. And with Tea and Sanctuary, I don't mind that there's a small number of people that listen to it. And, I would love people to discover it. Of course, I want to create safe, cozy spaces for people. I think we need them. And that's why I'm doing this podcast. I want people to have half an hour or so in the midst of all of the awful in the world, just to have a warm drink and listen to somebody burble about something harmless. I feel that's really important. But for Imagining Tomorrow, I feel that it's very, very important in a different way. Because one of my main aims with that podcast is to give people hope, to look the climate crisis in the face and say, yeah, this is absolutely terrible, but look at these things that people are doing right here, this tiny little thing here that you've not heard about because these stories aren't told in the main media. The mainstream media doesn't focus on good things that people are doing often enough, as far as I'm concerned. It's about amplifying the work of incredible people, and that's why I feel it's important. So if you could help me, I'd be really grateful. Because I decided at the last minute that I wanted to tell you about my crazy day as a spy in London, I'm going to talk about the other thing I was going to talk about in the next episode. So the last thing I'm going to say in this one, because time is marching on, is that I'm going to be at Worldcon this year. And it's in Glasgow. It's in August. I went to Dublin Worldcon in 2019. That was the last really big convention I went to. I did BristolCon, not last year, the year before. Last year was my bestie's 50th birthday, and I couldn't miss that because I was DJ. So I had to go to that. So I couldn't go to BristolCon last year. So I haven't been to a convention for over a year. I haven't been to a major convention in over 4 years. I'm very nervous. And it's the first big convention since I had a breakdown, since the divorce. It's going to be very different. My son and my bestie are going to come with me to give me moral support. So I know that I'm going to be okay. I know that I'm going to be able to do it. And I'm hoping that recording things like Tea and Sanctuary is going to help. Because one of the things that I love about doing this podcast is that people get in touch and leave comments and say how much they like it. And it makes me feel connected to my community. And that's one of the things which is so valuable about conventions, and in particular Worldcons, is to feel that you're part of that global community. And also for me, to be in the company of my peers. I've always said that the collective noun of authors is a moan of authors. We can sit in the bar together and we can moan. we can vent about things that we're worried about, things that are hard, but we can also celebrate, and we can celebrate each other and support each other. And that's why these things are so important. But you know, if you've listened to any of these episodes, you know how cripplingly shy I am and how difficult that I will find this. Interestingly, it's also going to be the first major convention since my autism diagnosis. So I'm actually quite hopeful that I'll be able to cope a little bit better, because I will understand why I start to feel overloaded. I'll understand what I find difficult about certain things and how to take care of myself better as a result. So that's going to be interesting. I've applied for programming. I've sent in suggestions for panels. I have said that I'd like to run my Overcoming Anxiety to be able to write workshop, which I have run multiple times at other conventions, and I know has been hugely valuable for some people. And it's something I really enjoy doing, and I like to be able to give back to the community in that way. The other thing that I've asked, and I don't know, all of this, I have no idea if it will get onto the programme, because the programme hasn't been decided yet. And there are literally hundreds of people suggesting things. But something that I'm hoping that I might be able to make happen is something that I did at BristolCon and I think at EasterCon one year, which was having like a crafting space where people could come and knit or crochet squares that we can stitch together into blankets. Now, the reason why I organised that, this was some years ago, like many years ago, was because there was a charity that was gathering these blankets and taking them to refugees in Calais. And I made, I think it was something like 5 or 6 huge blankets and took them to the local collection point. And it just felt really nice and really good. And what I was thinking about doing this year was doing that again. The blankets themselves, I'm wondering about whether it would be possible to auction them for charity, or I don't know, or find some kind of way. What I'd really love the idea of is to find people who have had a really difficult time in the Worldcon community, and find a way to get a blanket to them, so that literally the love and warmth of the community can literally be wrapped around their shoulders. I love the idea of that. How on earth I could make that happen administratively, logistically, I simply do not know, because I'm hopeless at that sort of thing. So if you have some idea about how that could be administrated, I would be really interested to hear your thoughts. But anyway, I sent that in as a kind of a programming suggestion in the section about like non-panel items. And I've also requested like a coffee chat thing. I can't remember what it was called on the form. They're often called cafe clutches, but it was called something else. Because those have been super lovely at conventions I've done before. And if I don't get a slot, then I think I might just see if I can say to people, I'm going to be here at this time. Come and have a cup of tea or whatever. I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to be at Worldcon. I want to... I had an image in my mind then of that kind of trust exercise where you have somebody that kind of leans back and people catch them. I feel like I want to fall back into the arms of my community. And I'm really looking forward to it. I've also applied for a space in the art show, which I'm very excited about. I've exhibited at a couple of Easter cons and at the Dublin Worldcon and Bristol cons as well. And yeah, it's a very nerve-wracking but very exciting thing, and people seem to like the dabblings that I do with paint. There will be sculptures there as well this year if I get a space. So yeah, I think that is everything for now. I'm going to finish that very lovely cup of tea that might be a little bit too cold now, but never mind. And I hope that between now and the next time that you hear my voice, that you have a lovely memory of your community, whether it's based at a convention, whether it's a gaming group, whether it's a reading group, whether it's, I don't know, some kind of local in the real world group, that there is a group of people, even in the loosest sense, like a group of people who are all fans of the same thing, that you can think of that and feel warm and squishy inside. Bye-bye, my lovelies. Take care. Bye. You've just listened to an episode of Tea and Sanctuary. If you enjoyed the show and would like to be an absolute bless poppet, you can help to keep the teapot full and the podcast ad-free by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Emma Newman. If you'd just like to buy me a nice cup of tea, go to ko-fi.com/Emma Newman. This episode was brought to you by 6 cups of tea, some really crumbly shortbread, and some good luck received in exchange for a shiny bead found in a field. Go forth, my bright buttercups, and be lovely to each other.